But now, since it was, can you tell it now, Common Sense?
I can, yes, I can.
Right, go ahead, do it.
No, I've forgotten it. I've absolutely forgotten
it. Let's act like nothing happened. Everybody just act like nothing happened. So, hey, man, we're so lucky today. Oh, where were we at? Man, tell you what a boon. It's Police State once again. And for those of you that aren't familiar or don't care to pay attention, Police State are those nights where we're not doing church and we're not, it's not even a normal Monday church service. This is when we have a specific focus and we'll have a specific guest with a specific set of knowledge, a specific skills, knowledge set, I should say. And that's so that we can delve deep in some of the issues that are going on in our modern day and maybe try to find some answers. Maybe not, if nothing else, to just discuss these things, because as our guest today often says, I know he didn't invent the quote, but as he often says, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I'm the Laughing Ogre. We got the Common Sense Guy, my benevolent, wonderful co-host. We got our court jester, Magic Bollocks, and our special guest, Conscious Caracal. Do you care to tell us a little something about yourself, Conscious Caracal, before we jump right into this story and I kick it off to Common Sense Guy?
Well, if I have to just sum myself up, I'm just a South African free thinker. I just think for myself and I think ahead. And I think that sums it up pretty well. I give my opinion on politics and philosophy, and if everyone cares to tune in or cares what I have to say, then great. But otherwise, I'm just talking to the void.
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah. Actually, on a bit of a tangent, Common Sense Guy, I've been watching a few of your videos, proper binge, and you've earned a subscriber, definitely. I like your approach to just analysis. It's very candid, but I like it.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you for that.
He's good. I like the candid part that you mentioned. He's had, I don't know if you've seen one he did with the, I'm going to have to call him a pedophile apologist. But
Mr.
he did
Mr. Yee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was just passionate. I don't know how else to say it. Very candid, very passionate. And it's rare that I see that on this platform, YouTube, and it seems real. Most times it seems contrived in one way or another. And with the Common Sense Guy, the feeling comes out. Well, look, boys, let's do this, man. We'll learn more about each other as we roll along. And I want to blister through this story so that I can just pass it on to Common Sense. Big thanks to my co-host, because I had no idea this was going on. Briefly, as I said before the show, I was busy playing Batman Origins, and I couldn't be bothered with very important world events. So thank you so much, Common Sense. Apparently, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe stepping down. This is from Washington, out of Washington, ABC News. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who's been attacked by President Donald Trump, stepped down Monday. And I want to make a point. I'm just going to point this out very quickly. Remember this. Keep this on a little hook in the back of your mind. Attacked by President Donald Trump. Watch, and I'm not going to point out every time, but watch how they work this in, if they do later on, how they work these in the body. It's very important too. In the body of this, seems pretty nonpartisan. The headline. It's just, hey, what's happening? This seems like, oh, and why am I doing that? For some reason. I don't know why it was doing that. Hopefully it wasn't doing it the whole time. And so let me get right back on this. I want to keep this idea going, and I got to keep reading this. But just watch how this happens in the body of this from NBC News. So who has been attacked by President Donald Trump stepped down Monday? Multiple sources familiar with the matter told NBC News. McCabe will remain on FBI payroll until he's eligible to retire with full benefits in mid-March, the sources said. One source said McCabe was exercising his retirement eligibility and characterized his decision as stepping aside.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we really can't say that so much, and just maybe another paragraph and we'll get rid of this. McCabe has been at the center of ongoing tensions between the White House and the FBI and has reportedly been under pressure to quit from Trump, whose presidential campaign is being investigated for possible collusion with Russia. Earlier this month, the Washington Post reported that after Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, he met with McCabe in the Oval Office and asked him whom he had voted for in the 2016 election. Trump, the officials told the Post, also vented his anger at McCabe over hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations that his wife, a Democrat, received for her failed 2015 Virginia State Senate bid from a political action committee controlled by a close friend, Hillary Clinton. Longtime career servant, McCabe has served at the FBI since 1996 under former directors Robert Mueller and Comey. Trump did not answer Monday when asked if he knew McCabe was stepping aside. White House press secretary, I think this goes on for quite some time, and that should be enough to kick us off on that. Just remember, as I said, keep that hook in the back of your mind filled with the idea that they put attacks on certain things in the body of this story. What do y'all think about this McCabe's situation? Anybody know more about it than I do?
Well, wasn't he supposed to go through a lie detector? And wasn't that the reason why he's actually stepping down?
I will whittle down through the story. I'm going to keep on reading as we talk, and if I come across it, I will definitely confirm or deny that.
Again, Matt Barkley puts into the comment section, sources familiar with is a red flag for me. I did a story on Euronews about this Belgium news stuff that went through today, a couple of days ago, Monday actually, sorry, last Monday. And it was a case of we think, sources say, and it's just like, you don't have any sort of identification or any sources whatsoever. This is just literally a fake news story. So when somebody says exactly as what Matt just said, the source is familiar with, putting the story out their asses so they don't have to provide citation for it. And it just is so obvious now. Or at least in my opinion, it's so obvious.
Well, that's definitely a good point. I'll give them that. I'm still combing for anything that says anything about about a lie detector, as you gentlemen continue.
Yeah, because I saw today, you're all familiar with the journalist Jack Posobiec.
Oh, yeah.
He made a tweet where someone tweeted at him, if the memo is released and basically nothing, what will your Twitter response be? And he said, if you think the memo is nothing, then why did Andrew McCabe just resign? I think that's a pretty good point. I think things are coming to a boil now, and we will definitely be much wiser in 2 weeks than we are now on this topic. So I'm waiting in anticipation.
I would like to know why he's actually decided that he's able to step aside, so to speak. And why, if he's stepping aside, why is he taking eligible early retirement funds, so to speak? So he's still paid up to March.
Yeah,
I'm going to find out how much.
Wrong.
I'm going to find out how much that is too. Common sense. I don't know if I'll be able to now. I'm looking because I'm trying to find out how much that's going to cost us.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, it coincidentally just coincides with this release the memo pressure, and I don't think that's just out of chance. I think something big is developing, and I'm going to keep a close eye on this in the next coming weeks. And I suggest anyone else listening, just keep like one of your eyes open and just check what's going on. I think we're going to be much wiser, like I said, in about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. Well, looking at what the stuff I've been reading up about McCabe is that yes, massive conflict of interest apparently, because his wife received roughly just under $700,000 from Governor Terry McCaffrey, I can't even pronounce that, PAC from the Virginian Democratic Party, according to factcheck.org. So basically, his wife was, I can't remember the exact story, whether she was running for Senate or...
She was, yeah, she was running for Senate. It says in the story just said as well.
Yeah, and I know that he was a... certainly when Trump won, was a very quiet supporter of Clinton. I know there is very close ties as well between him.
Well, before you carry on, Ogre's made a really good thing. How is it a phony Hillary Clinton investigation? The Hillary Clinton investigation, even if they didn't find anything, wasn't phony. The whole point is when sorry. Carry on. Sorry, I just cut you off.
No, that was great. I mean, because I'm looking at this and the whole body of this story is just assumption and attack after assumption and attack. It's amazing how some of these news organizations do this. And what I'm reading, it's not news, folks. I'm sorry. It's a great editorial. Okay. Should be in the back of the page under an editorial section, but this is not a news story. I don't want to quite go so far as say it's fake news. I heard that said, though. I also won't go so far as to defend it, that it's not fake news. I'm just saying that it's pretty shoddy ass
No, I'd have to agree with you. If I had to put a genre on this story, I would have to say that it's a opinion piece at best, and that's being generous.
Mm.
At least with an opinion piece like what we do on the internet, we still provide sources to collaborate our opinions.
Yeah, Carrickle made a wonderful point that we'll know a lot more in a couple weeks. That's good. That's where I'm at with this part. And look, boys, I'm going to move this along because we got one more story. And if there's something else that somebody wants to say after I start to at least read this headline, because this is the distinction I wanted to make between that the last excuse me was that NBC News story and the one that we're going to look at right now from Fox News. Because please, folks, listen. If you like Fox News, fine. I like Fox News. I love Tucker Carlson. Watch the gentleman that you can see on your screen here quite often. And I do like some of their stuff. But don't be fooled. They are giving it to you also. And you'll notice in the headline here. Now, the headline was very nonpartisan. It was just a straight-up news headline in that the NBC piece that we read. But look at this. House panel poised to vote on surveillance memo release as FBI boss pays visit to the Hill. I've never heard this. I mean, hashtag, we were talking about it before the show. Hashtag release the memo, Common Sense said, but never heard of this, anything. I've never heard of it referred to this. They're doing the same thing, folks. They're trying to get this subliminal message to you. They're just doing this. And now, look, I haven't read a whole lot of this, to be fair. We'll see what attacks or how they prop up one side or the other as we go in here.
As far as I'm aware, and please chat, correct me if I'm wrong, because generally you guys know more than what we do, and we rely on you to be able to tell us. But as far as I'm aware, what this memo is supposed to suggest is that the Obama administration and the Clinton administration was able to collude together to put finances and resources together, including the FBI and CIA, to be able to monitor what was going on with Trump and Trump's associates while he was actually
spy on their political opponents. That's the gist of it. They used FBI and CIA tools and means to be able to spy on their political opponents and get the edge on them. And I think that's heavily unethical. I think it's actually preposterous. And that's why I'm in full support of release the memo. I think the American people deserve to know, even if it's nothing. Why are people so afraid of what's in that memo? I mean, if it's nothing, then release it anyway. If it's nothing of interest, why are people so afraid? Why are so many people saying, "Nah, we shouldn't do this. It's not worth it"? Like, oh, why not? Well, hey, what are you so afraid of? My question.
The fact that legacies will be broken. That's the problem with it, isn't it? The fact that legacies will be broken, and unfortunately, what's actually going to be happening? The fact that you're using surveillance to actually go on private citizens at that point.
Oh man.
Oh yes. And the fact that I imagine the Obamas were hoping to become a new legacy as well, weren't they?
That's getting tore down brick by brick.
Exactly. Exactly. Though it would be very, very interesting to see what the correlation of actually the Hillary Clinton point of this is. The fact of, has that lost any of the memos or deleted some of the memos when it was in captivity or when it was being in holding? That would be an interesting point to find out if they did any of that, because who held the information at that point? The FBI.
Yep. And let me move this forward a little bit, boys. I'm just going to read a paragraph or two. Maybe we'll touch on this, and then I really want to get to the meat of this, because most people are gathered here today, Conscious Carrickle, for you. In the time that I've been on the internet, I've never heard you really speak much about what we're going to talk about tonight. Now you've given quotes, and I know that you're proud of where you're from. I know that you're an African. I know that you're very, you love the soil you live on, and that's what's important to you. So we want to get into that. There's maybe 2-3 paragraphs, and we'll see. Again, this is the headline: House panel poised to vote on surveillance memo release as FBI boss pays visit to the Hill. A key House committee is set to vote as early as Monday on whether to make a public classified memo that top congressional Republicans say details government surveillance abuses and has emerged at the center of a power struggle in Washington. Those who have seen the document suggest that it reveals what role the unverified anti-Trump dossier played in the application for a surveillance warrant on at least one President Trump associate. Now I'm telling you, if you listen to that, I'm not going to go back and go cut this down piece by piece. I said 2 paragraphs. I'll read maybe that's it. In fact, boys, we see what this is about. Conscious Clerical already kicked us off pretty good, but don't be fooled. As we see in the body of this, they're already using things to deflect in another direction, and I can't stand that. I miss the old news when it was who, what, where, when, why, and very rarely how.
But they can't produce it yet because it hasn't been released. It's against government policy, as you all know, for them to put the names in when it hasn't been released yet.
Yeah. I just, when it says those who have seen, again, they didn't say an unidentified source, but this is how they worded it. Those who have seen the document suggest it reveals what role the unverified anti-Trump dossier, or otherwise known as PIS dossier, played in the application for a surveillance warrant. Well, we don't know. Why are they even? This isn't new. This paragraph, if I was the editor of this, even if it's just their internet side of it, if I was the editor, this would have been cut out.
Well, think who would have actually have seen it though, which would mainly have been Congress members and people that are in
say their name
in the House.
Then say Congress member such and so seen it and said this.
But the thing is that really catches my eye is the fact that they've been spinning this narrative of, oh, it's only Russian bots pushing release the memo. But we have tweets from Congress members that have read and seen this memo that said, no, the American people need to know what's in this memo. It's disturbing. It's one of the,
but you've got people like Stephen King, for God's sake, that have come out and bloody said it.
Yep. And he hates the president, and he seems like he hates America, even though I own every one of his audio books, Stephen King, you dick. I still like it.
Just because someone is good in one facet of life doesn't mean they're all-encompassing all traits. I can still like someone's music or someone's books, even though they're politically illiterate.
Yeah. And so look, Magic Box has said very little, so let's do this. Let's let Magic Box say whatever he feels on this, and then you two wrap it up in succession. Common Sense Guy, Clerical, and then let's get on to the show proper, where I turn it over to Common Sense Guy, and we just start to maybe find out, I don't want to tease it anymore, and I already have. We'll do that. How about that, boys? Because I've said everything I need to say about this for the time being, till, as Conscious Clerical said, about 2 weeks from now, I'll know more, and I'll be able to comment more on it. So what do you think, Bollocks? You got anything about this? Do you care? Because you're a Brit, do you just want to see America sink and then come over here, as probably your plan is, the lot of you, to retake over the wayward colonies?
Oh, well, that's going to happen anyway, regardless of whether they release that memo or not. But my sort of attitude to it is, as the boys have been saying, is if there was nothing to hide, then the Democrats wouldn't be trying to block it. So there obviously is something very interesting in in this memo for the world to see. And it's going to be, I really do want it to be explosive, because of all the arrogant shitbags I know who are so partisan these days that, the very thought of having to admit that, the people, who still staunchly support the Democrats, who still think that Hillary Clinton had the, it was basically the ascension to the throne in a way, as opposed to a democratic election. The fact of having to see them try to justify their, beliefs still after all this could potentially come out and effectively, ruin the media narrative, ruin the whole left-wing argument that the Democrats should always be in power and there should be no contest to it. It will be very, very satisfying. And I can't wait as well to see how many days or weeks or even months it'll take for our state broadcasters here to actually have to admit it as well, because of the fact that all our media in this country, with a few exceptions, is now just run by ideologues and globalists. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, and I hope old Conscious Clerical's prediction is true. I can happily wait a fortnight.
Yeah. First of all, obviously, Prespo 058 has said exactly what I was about to say anyway, but it's not Stephen King; it's Congressman Steve King.
Oh, yeah. Well, if that's, but I still, Stephen King, the writer that I love so much, he is want to tweet some things that are, he's a dick.
Un-American.
Yeah, but I still like. I mean, it's like Clerical said, but I didn't know that. I didn't know there's a Congressman Steve King. I wouldn't have known that.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm completely and utterly with Magic Box on this. I honestly don't think until the last minute that places like Sky, Channel 4, and BBC over in the good old UK, so to speak, will even mention anything of this until they have to. I mean, I'm quite lucky that I've subscribed to Fox News and CNN on my phone and changed my location for them to be in the US, because otherwise I wouldn't have got it anyway. So I was able to do that way, so I could get the news story. It broke, and I was able to get a notification for it straight away. So I was quite happy with that. But it's just funny. It's like we say about Sweden and all the places in Europe. I mean, we're going to be talking about South Africa. Nobody really understands, apart from obviously Conscious Caracal, what the actual problems are in South Africa, because we don't hear anything about it. When's the last news story you actually heard about South Africa, apart from when Lawrence Southern went to do something about it?
No, the thing about 2018 is now it seems the accepted declaration is that you can't criticize an African country for anything. You can't even criticize them on their genuine faults, because that would be racist. I think that's kind of been established by the media this year.
Except
you can't even point out the failings of an African country, because the majority of the population are of a certain group of people. I mean, fuck, man. If you can't point out, that's like saying you can't criticize your brother. You can't criticize your brother. He has the majority of the same genes as you. You can't say that. Like, no, I criticize my brother because I love him. I criticize other countries. I criticize my own country because I love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what needs to happen in the world community. Yeah.
Yeah, not unless you're the Ugandan president, though, because then you can come out and say, no, I actually agree with Trump. Hey, he is a shithole country.
He's just a Russian plant, man. Don't fall for that.
There's a Russian bot that did Photoshop and video to make it seem that it really wasn't him.
Yeah,
I've been called a Russian bot so many times. I've been called a Russian bot so many times on Twitter, and my response is always that I'm the most fucking sophisticated Russian bot out there. I mean, this talking on a stream, this is all just text-to-voice synchronization. Perfect simulation of a South African accent, everything. Yeah, I'm not even real. I'm just an artificial intelligence for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, I've been called a Russian bot a couple of times. Before I actually started doing this channel, I used to go around with somebody on Twitter who has lots of Pepe memes and things like that, King something or other. And used to go around with him, and we used to do like not double team arguments, but he would normally start an argument and I'd normally come in with facts and things like that, because he's a good bloke and everything, but he generally doesn't know how to like click the link and share it for some reason. Yeah. But I used to do that, and every time that we did that, it was like, oh yeah, you're a Russian bot. Always.
Well, yeah, sure, man.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm as probably as English and as British as they come. I mean, Ogre's already seen what type of tattoos I have on my right hand, well, on my right arm. I'm as British or as English as I can be.
Why?
It's a swastika. Okay, he has a SWAT knife.
Anyway, I have an honest question. Honest question. Why would a British cat want tattoos on his arm? Like, doesn't your fur just cover it all? Like, what's
exactly.
Oh, he's done face reveals. He's him and the voice of one that happens to be in the chat right now. They're the biggest English blokes I've ever seen in my life. Both them fuckers.
On the same topic, while I was watching one of your videos, Common Sense Guy, I saw one of the comments down there was like, "Are you really a cat?" And your comment was like, "Yes."
Hey, all he's doing is giving the audience what they want.
Yeah. So hey, very quickly,
there's a conspiracy theory on my videos, because whenever I show my face, normally my cat goes behind me, so they're trying to say that my cat is actually pulling the strings on me.
You're the cat's glove puppet.
I am. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think my little conspiracy theory is that Ogre is being controlled by his dog. Like, his dog is just pulling all the strings. He's always in all the shots. He's always there, watching, waiting, orchestrating.
Yep. I reckon he's actually an alien beard who's wearing a earthling suit.
She won't sit on the couch and give me a Sig Heil. She won't do it, but she'll sit on the floor and do it. She's so weird. Good girl. You can't probably see her from down there. Yeah. No, she is pulling the strings. It's funny, at late at night when it's really cold, she's never liked to wake us up. All of our other dogs, man, they'd whine, poke us in the back with their cold nose, whatever. Get up, I got to take a dump or whatever. No, she'll just sneak out here. And luckily with this dog, she farts a lot. And about once a month or so, You know, it's too cold for her. I think that might be it too. She can't be bothered to go outside, and she'll poo right in the freaking middle of the floor. That dog. So in the end, yeah, I mean, I've heard it said that if the aliens were watching us, you know, and how we treat animals, some of us, they'd wonder who was the boss and who was the, you know, who was in control. And in this house, yes, it would probably look like my Doberman Pinscher. I do love her though. She's a mouse killing son of a bitch. She kills more mice, I bet, than your cat has. Common sense. She kills two or three a day at least.
That's fine. Our cat's an indoor rescue cat, so she doesn't go out.
Well, oh, and you probably don't have mice. Well, I got mice in
not
here.
on the top floor of a flat. Not on the top floor of a flat.
You know, it gets, and look, I needed to quit because we got to go. We got to segue into this. I don't know how good to do it, so I'm just going to say, even though I shouldn't do this too much on a work day. Thank you so much for being here, Mad Dodge, Matt Barkley, Lord Jensen, Quinn, Sardonic 7. Oh, all of you, I love you so much. 95, everybody that's out there, me too. I mean, I see so many people. 058. Thank you so much for being here. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. That's it. And that said, I'm just going to completely say we said what we had to say today. We'll get back to this story probably next Monday. We'll have another week to think about it. But I do believe it's time that I turn the show proper over to Common Sense Guy.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Obviously, we've got Conscious Caracal here today, so we're going to be talking about different things that are happening in South Africa at the moment. I know Magic Bollocks has some questions, so I'm going to do exactly what Ogre said. I'm going to turn it over to Magic Bollocks to start the questions off first, and then we'll go on from there.
Well, it's not so much a question. I saw a blog yesterday. Funny enough, that's why I thought it was such a coincidence when Mr. Ogre said we were having Conscious Clerical on, and it's a bit extreme. It's written by a right-wing nationalist who I follow just because he occasionally writes things that are interesting. But his blog was basically entitled "It's Time to Recolonize South Africa," and he's basically saying it's time to repeal the South African Act of 1909.
Oh, dude, we went through so much shit to cut that umbilical cord with the British. I don't think you're gonna get that done without a fight.
I think he's trying to imply that ever since the the cucked whites of South Africa basically dissolved apartheid in '94, that the next colonizer is going to have to go back in and sort it out. These days, the way we are, I wouldn't recommend that anyway. But what I was reading on there was quite interesting because of his sort of take. I mean, I should have sent it to you before so you could have a quick read through, but his basically take is that that when obviously the ANC got into power in was it 94 or 95 with Mandela as president, effectively, he said that they behaved themselves for the first couple of terms because of the fact that the whole world was watching at the time, with the idea of apartheid was now over, and Mandela, the political prisoner, was now actually running the country. But ever since he left, and then the world basically stopped watching, is when South Africa decided that we like what Mugabe's up to. It's now our turn, and talking about how where is it? Yes, there are about 5 million whites still living in South Africa. 1 million of them are destitute, jobless, and homeless, and living in squalor camps. Whites now find it very difficult to get jobs because companies are not allowed to employ them except in an 8-to-1 ratio with blacks. In practice, to have a job in South Africa, a white must be self-employed, ideally working remotely for a foreign company and earning dollars or pounds. The rand has collapsed to 1/10 of its high watermark value. Now, does any of that ring true with yourself?
Well, the thing is, since President Zuma has been pretty much replaced as the president of the ANC, and Cyril Ramaphosa has taken over, the rand has strengthened quite a lot. I think we're now at 11 rand to the dollar, and I think that's a pretty good place to be at the moment. Business confidence is definitely growing, but it is true that a lot of South Africans look for jobs in the foreign market because of the racialized policies that South Africa has. It's almost like a double whammy. You get more pounds or dollars or whatever for your labor, and you also can compete on a level playing field. So I can see the appeal. At the same time, my logic is the people that are going to fix this country are the people that can afford to leave. and that's why I'm staying behind. I can afford to run away, but I'm not going to run away because my parents, well, my ancestors have been here since 1688. I'm 9th generation. I'm more African than European. I've visited Europe. I have no connection to Europe. Europe doesn't feel like home. It feels like a foreign place to me. It feels cold and metallic. South Africa is where I live. South Africa is my home, and I miss the people. I miss the atmosphere. I miss the feel of South Africa whenever I leave. So I'll probably die here, be it at the barrel of a gun or on my deathbed. I don't care. I'll be buried in the African soil if I have my way.
No, that's totally understandable because of the fact you, like you said, you were born there and you're actually quite proud of where you're from. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And that's half the problem we've now got in the West is people are being brought up to hate their heritage and hate who they are. And just because you're a white man living in South Africa doesn't mean you're any less of an African than the blacks.
And I think that's more than half the problem that the majority of the population will have there with the Boers. I mean, historically, I don't think that hopefully it'll never come to this. And even though they're already singing songs about, killing the Boer and stuff like this. But if it does, I mean, historically, it hasn't worked out for the aggressors because it seems like all of these Afrikaans, I hope I'm saying that right, have come to the same resolve that they want to die there and they don't really care if that's one way or the other. So I hope that peace can be found. But I do want to know, I got a question, if that one was asked and answered fully.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, go for it.
So I was reading that since apartheid was quote unquote ended, and it would have been Mandela's regime took over, and the subsequent administration's regimes, whatever you call it. I mean, no disrespect with regime. I should have said administration. And the subsequent administrations have taken over. That there were 180 new apartheid-like laws that have been implemented, and in that sense, again, a majority black administration's taken over. Is that the case? And if so, I mean, how does that affected your life?
Yeah, so I can't give you the exact number, but there's definitely been a steady increase in racialized employment laws. And the thing is, it's called BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. Past 3 years, the ANC has upped its rhetoric in terms of radical economic transformation. They want the economy to represent the racial demographics of the country. And at the moment, it's definitely far from it. Most of the highest earners in South Africa are still whites. And if you look at any big company, there's still a disproportionate amount of white people in charge. And I can see where the gripe is coming from. But at the same time, I also argue it's a long and steady process. You're not going to fix that within a few years with radical policies. You're going to have to give it time. You're going to have to, it's an intergenerational thing. You're not going to fix it within a generation. And if you opt for quick fixes, you're going to end up with a huge fuck up because you're going to force it. You're not going to let it happen naturally. You're not going to let the free market take its course. You're going to force it. You're going to create like this Frankenstein economy that can't sustain itself. And at the moment, for example, the agriculture sector is a good example. A huge, I can't give you the exact number, but the vast majority of farmers and the big agricultural corporate farmers in South Africa are still white because they have the expertise, they have the background, they have the land, they have everything that they need to feed the country and to contribute to exports. And the thing is, if you just radically transform it like Zimbabwe did, you're going to end up with a famine. You're going to end up with people that you give farms to that have no background in farming. And I'm talking about corporate farming, huge people that own huge acres of land, not like little sustainable farming that was going on in South Africa, more of the term of like huge corporate farms. And if you force that, you're heading for disaster. You're going to create a huge fuck up. So for me, it's more of a long-term thing. It's going to take patience. It's going to take a lot of determination. But I think we can do it. I think we can realistically transform the economy to represent more accurately the racial demographics of the country. If you just give it time, if you use the right policies. But if you rush it, then you can end up with a complete disaster. So, because at the same time, if you rush it through radical transformation, you just start appropriating land without compensation. Firstly, you're going to lose business confidence. You're going to lose foreign direct investment. People are going to want nothing to do with South Africa, just as they had with Zimbabwe. And you're going to end up with so much potential wasted. And that's what I keep telling people, is that we need to be patient. It's a slow process. We have so much psychological, political, and socioeconomic baggage that we need to deal with. And we're not going to sort it out in a fortnight.
It's funny that you've mentioned all of that. Obviously, to me, from somebody looking from the outside in, I would say that that's obviously more of a socialistic or communistic social planning. And in other words, try and force people to go off to do what we actually need to do. So, for instance, as you said, agriculture is probably one of the biggest outlops or outcrops that you can actually do in South Africa, obviously providing different points of view. I don't know because I'm not there, but I'm guessing. So that means that they would be forcing people to try and provide them to be able to do the different bits and pieces for the economy. But yet, if people wanted to do farming, then surely they would have done farming. So forcing somebody to do something is a case of what you've just literally said, a case of trying to change the generational perspective. Now, as you've obviously already stated, it's a case of you can't change that in one generation. You have to make people realize that if you want to earn money, you have to work for it. And unfortunately, the thing is, they push us.
Yeah, what happens is there's already been a lot of farms and land that's been reappropriated. But what happens is the vast majority of that land, after it's been given back to people, they just sell it off again, and they're not farmers. They just want the money, and then they go on with their lives. And then the farmers that gave that land, that sold that land, then just buy it back at a bigger price and just go on as if nothing happened. So you end up at the same situation with just a poorer farmer and some guy that profited off the land appropriation.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is that your main economics at the moment would actually be the buying and selling of inflated farms at the minute, which is also another point of socialistic tendencies. The fact that everything inflates because you're not actually doing anything.
There's not an increase in GDP. There's not an increase in the amount of agriculture that's being produced. There's only the land just switches hands and then it switches back. The price change, but it's the same exact spot where you were 2 years ago. So nothing really happens. It's just political pandering to an extent.
Yeah.
So my solution would be. So my solution would be that it's a long-term process. We need to raise a generation of African farmers and black farmers to be able to know how to run a corporate farm. That a person that owns a huge amount of land that can do agriculture on an industrial scale. And at the moment we do not have the skill. So we need to so I'm not against the idea of having the agricultural sector reflect the racial demographic of the country. I think it's very essential, but it's a long-term process. We're going to have to employ people, but we're also going to have to educate people. We're going to have to develop skills. We're going to have to create a generation of black South Africans that can run a corporate farm on an industrial scale, and at the moment we're not there yet.
No, it's funny because obviously we're talking about the farm that was obviously being sold and then left and then sold and then left. In that process of it being sold and left, when it's left for, I would imagine, at least 4 to 5 months for obviously paperwork and things like that to change hands at least. So between
we're producing nothing.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was just about to say. It's producing nothing, which means it's producing nothing for the economy. Yes, it makes one big sale, but in that 4 to 5 months, you'd probably be able to make the money back on, or at least half of it, on the farm anyway. So it swings and roundabouts, but if you've only got nobody to maintain that farm, the farm's going to go into disrepair anyway, which means whoever does buy it is going to have to actually put more money into actually running it, bar actually getting the insight to be able to run it in the first place. It's just a never-ending story, isn't it? It's just a loop that keeps on going round and round, and all it's doing is making things worse, not better.
So I saw in the chat, Susie Monkey asked, don't have alarms? And absolutely. A lot of the farmers have hectic electric fences and everything. I saw a tweet the other day from a guy, Roman Kabanak, and he said, I'm on a farm in Limpopo, like the upper province of South Africa, really rugged area. The farmer he was talking to has an AR-15 and a 9mm pistol and combat knife with him wherever he goes. His neighbor was murdered last year. Tensions are very high, he reported.
Fucking hell, yeah.
That's terrible.
Fucking AR-15, man, walking around on your farm.
Well, at least he can defend himself, because the fact of the matter is, now I'm going to equate the two, because there's places in Alaska and the Yukon and Canada where if you're out there, even in Canada, if you're out there without a 45 Magnum, I mean a 6-shot revolver, not a handgun, 45 may be okay, but we're talking about grizzly bears, man. You probably want to carry a 45 Magnum, 44, something like that, 357, and a rifle. I mean, if you carry that with you everywhere, why? Because your life's at risk. You have no idea when the next corner you're going to turn to be a Wolverine there eating what's left of a carcass. You're a threat. It's the middle of nowhere. He's hungry. That fucking little 3.5-foot Wolverine will eat you. I don't go out at night here without being armed ever.
Yeah,
because we have coyotes, we have black bear, we have mountain lions.
Yeah, you're arming yourself against animals. You're not arming yourself against human beings. I
understand that, but the wonderful thing is that this human being has that ability. And there's one cool thing, very briefly, Dr. Garcia discovered something that people kind of already know about and probably have known for eons, but it's called taste aversion. He's the one that really wrote a paper on it in the psychological journals. And what he found is if you poison a carcass just enough to make coyotes and wolves and bears, whatever it is that's around eating your flocks, really sick, but not kill them, they won't touch a sheep after that, or a cow. They won't. It's taste aversion. And that's the wonderful thing. Well, and the wonderful thing with humans is, check it out, Dr. Garcia. He started in psychology when he was older. I really like the guy. But the interesting thing is with people now, yes, the farmer's at a disadvantage that we have somebody that can strategize against him, try to get him in his sleep or lay in wait, all these things. But also, if he ever has to use his weapon, he's at the advantage that people will know then. At this farm, people tried this, and there were 4 folks killed there. And that would increase his chances of maybe being left alone, unless it was don't believe me, I'm trying not to be gild the lily also.
So while we're on the topic of more sophisticated threats, check that link I just sent in the chat. Can you put that on display, please, Oga? Just to show what we're dealing with here. Yeah, so SA criminals are using high-tech military equipment. You can view it there. They're using cell phone jammers. These people are armed with military-grade weapons and military-grade technology. You can put it on display. You don't have to. You can keep it on presenting. It's fucking scary. It's look at that tech that they have. So the chat can see as well. Just waiting for Oga to put it on presentation.
I'm pretty sure it is presenting to everyone.
Okay, shut. Okay, so look at that web. Look at that technology that they already have. How does military equipment end up in the hands of criminals? Cell phone jamming equipment. And though I'd have to put in a disclaimer, this photo is not recent. It's from 2015. But the fact remains, these are people that are stalking farms with equipment that can jam people's cell phones. So you can't even call for help. You can't even call the police. So if that's activated, you're alone there in the bush and you're on your farm with fucking psychopaths walking around.
Huh.
That's really worrying. So the fact that they know that people are going to be able to phone police and things like that, and I'm sure that you'll be able to confirm as well, but I've heard a couple of stories of people that have had guns and been able to shoot at people and things like that, and then they've actually come back to the farms as well and been able to not necessarily just nick things, but have gone through, should I say it delicately, gone through family members that are female.
No, and the thing is, which makes these farm murders very eerie, is the fact that they're not regular robberies. These people go to these farms and they torture these people. In many of these cases, they torture them with fucking irons. They torture them. They take children and they drown them in boiling water. They take people. They torture them with drills. They cut off their fucking toenails and they rip off their toenails with like pliers and they cut off their nails and their everything. Dude, it's terrible. And I always use this example of where people say, oh, it's just regular crime. Like, well, take this example where a car, for example, let's say a car hijacker goes to a car, he drags the guy out of the car, fucking beats the shit out of him, takes the car battery, tortures him some more, and then he drives off of the car. Now, would you call that regular crime? Well, that's not something that really happened. That's just an analogy for what's actually happening on these farms. It's not regular crime. This is sadistic shit.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not any sort of normal crime, is it? When you're actually torturing the people to get what you want, where they're basically giving you everything that they want because they've got nowhere to hide it. You have to remember these people are farmers. It's not like they're rich people or anything else like that. They ain't got massive safes or anything else like that. Yes, they may be richer than what you would do in a shanty town or anything else like that, but they're still just what you would call farmers from any sort of other local economy.
And in many of these cases, they target elderly people. They target people that are in their 80s and in their 70s, and then they torture these people. And it's heartbreaking. It's fucking disturbing. And this news doesn't cause national outrage. We had more outrage about that H&M shirt than that we had about elderly people in their 80s getting tortured with a drill. I can't believe that. It's ridiculous.
I honestly can't believe that. The fact that a shirt that says "Little Monkeys," as in just designed for little kids as well, and because a black kid was wearing it, they thought, "Oh, this is racist because little monkeys on it." When the actual story even said, and the child's mum actually said, "Well, no, we found it interesting. We didn't find it in bad taste whatsoever." That's more important than people getting raped, tortured, and basically shot and killed for absolutely nothing compared to what we have now. Absolutely nothing. And people are more outraged about a fucking T-shirt compared to people being raped and murdered. What's the world fucking coming to?
Yeah. These gangs going around doing these, torturing and beating these white farmers. Has it ever been proven that they have links to maybe the ANC movement?
No, a lot of people on the more radical side of the political rhetoric will say, "Oh no, there's definitely proof." But not to my knowledge, there's not any paper trail, anything linking them to the current government. Right. That's why I always tell people I'm really cautious about calling it a genocide because it's definitely a serious issue, but calling it a genocide is really pushing it. It's incredibly messed up what is happening, but we're not being put into camps. We're not being singled out and killed. There's absolutely no proof that I've found that links these attacks to the government, even though, which something that does bother me is that the fact that the government does not speak out against it. There's no condemnation from the national government to it.
Yeah,
but from my perspective,
you are being
singled out. But from my perspective, I can't. Yeah, but not in the sense where it's a genocide. That's what I mean.
All right. Because Common Sense Guy has something to say, but I probably would press you a lot on that. I just don't see it that way. But you live there.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say on that, is a case of if the government is not prosecuting the people that generally are doing this when they're caught, which sometimes they don't, they get let off, and which I'm sure you're more than aware than what I am on that part. Is kind of a case of maybe saying that there may be some affiliation or at least sympathy towards these people rather than actually just throwing the book at these people. Especially considering that most of the, I can't remember the name of the administration, the government there, but especially considering most of them are now going for more pro-black stances and not really that bothered about white stance whatsoever. It would have a correlation. I'm not saying it's a causation, but a correlation.
Yes, that's why I always make the point that I'm really cautious about calling it a government-funded genocide, which is the rhetoric that a lot of people are pushing. Yeah. It's definitely a serious issue, and I'm really glad that people are talking about it, and it needs to get out. But you need to be cautious because you're discrediting the movement to bring awareness to this thing. If you overblow it, if you exaggerate it, if you just go, "Oh no, it's a systematic genocide of a race in South Africa," it's like, well, then you're making it easy for the people on sympathizing with these more radical social justice movements to just shoot it down, like, "Oh no, it's not a genocide." Well, yeah, it's not. It's more of it's a very serious issue that's being propagated a lot by racial tensions. And I think the main source of it is also the dehumanization of an entire race. That's definitely happening. There's this rhetoric going around that farmers, well, the whites in South Africa, they stole your land, they're devils, they're absolutely inhuman, you can do whatever you want to them. And I think that's what's giving a lot of these gangs that are doing these atrocious attacks the confidence and the justification for what they're doing. I think that's the main source that needs to be targeted, is the rhetoric that's being used, the dehumanization of white South Africans.
Yeah. I'd definitely say that maybe if it's not a form of genocide, I'd definitely say that it's a pandemic or a form of a pandemic compared to what's going on. If you look at any sort of correlation between white farmers' deaths compared to anything else, or just white rapes in general, because I know that that's extremely high at the minute.
Yeah, for example, here's a stat. The Transvaal Agricultural Union reported that on the 15th of December 2017, there's been 78 farm murders and 414 farm attacks in South Africa. And the year hasn't even ended in. I don't think there's even stats out for 2018. And it's fucking atrocious. It's the amount of people. There's another stat. It's more dangerous to be a farmer in South Africa than to be a policeman. In South Africa, the average murder rate is 33 people for 100,000. When it comes to police, the number is at 54 per 100,000, and when it comes to farmers, it's 133 per 100,000. So it's one of the most dangerous professions in the world to be a South African farmer.
Wow,
ridiculous.
Well, police officers, they always say, and don't get me wrong, yeah, they do a job, but they never make the top 10 list in the United States. The top 3 is always logger, truck driver, and what am I leaving out? Oh, fisherman, commercial fisherman. Those are always the top 3. They swap, and usually commercial fisherman, I think it's been first place for decades now. So it swaps back and forth between logger and truck driver. Truck driver, truck drivers die every day. It's just every day. I mean, they don't even put it in the news because that's all you'd see is 50 truck drivers died today, and they're big rig because they were high on methamphetamine and went too fast down the mountain.
Yeah.
Can I just ask? Can I just quote something else? I've been reading through this blog again. There was a bit I just read that I just want to question conscious about. Another bit he puts, because obviously we're talking about the white farmers and this supposed white genocide. He actually calls it white genocide, but I'll read what he put. Despite endorsing white genocide, the South African government does not want the whites to leave. National stability requires a group to blame. Blaming the whites stops the many black tribes which inhabit South Africa from fighting each other. It is quite predictable that if the whites ever left, the country would descend into tribal civil war and essentially revert to the Stone Age. It would become one of the shithole countries President Trump spoke about recently. What is your take on that?
Well, my take on it is more from a theoretical perspective. It's always nice having a scapegoat. It's always great when things are going bad. You need someone to blame. You need a group of people. And just the Holocaust is a great example. You need a group of people to blame for the hardships that are going on. And people latch onto that. People want a scapegoat. People want someone to blame. And I think a good example is the story of Socrates, where Socrates was blamed with corrupting the youth of Athens. He was used as a scapegoat, and they killed him in the end. And it didn't solve their problems. Just like the story of Jesus, exactly the same. They identify someone, and then they use it as a way to deflect from their own failings. And I think the South African government uses a lot of this idea of white monopoly capital and the state being controlled by all these rich old white men to deflect from their own corruption and their own problems and their own failings. They can always just say, oh no, it's apartheid's fault, or it's the white man's fault. There's this cliche in South Africa where it's gotten quite old, where the South African government just blames all their failings and everything that's wrong in the country on apartheid. Now, apartheid did have a very strong legacy in South Africa in terms of things that it fucked up. But at the same time, you can't blame everything on it. You still need to have accountability. You still need to take responsibility for your own failings, your own failed policies. But it's always, like I said, and I think that's my answer, is the fact that it's always nice having a scapegoat. We all have scapegoats. Even everyone on this panel has used a scapegoat somewhere in their life to deflect from their own failings. I think it's very natural. I think it's a very human thing to do.
Yeah, because I understand that a lot of the nationalized assets that South Africa owned before, during apartheid, the ANC has pretty much flogged most of them off, haven't they? And a lot of it's fallen into Chinese hands now.
No, it's South Africa has a very interesting when it comes to foreign interest. I think a lot of foreign companies have a lot more say and influence in this country than people would like to believe. I think a lot of the country's problems are also stemming from the fact that most of our politicians are in the pockets of big money foreign investors and big money foreign influencers. A good example is the Fees Must Fall movement that happened 2 years ago in South Africa, where there was these huge riots at all the universities for free education. And as soon as their money ran out, but that's my theory, they just disappeared. They just completely vanished off the map. And I think their funding ran out. I think their foreign beneficiaries just saw, oh shit, these people taking this a bit too far. I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be connected to this. These people are doing some things that can be classed as terrorism. And if I'm ever connected to this group, my funding and my money, I'm in some deep shit. So I think what happened was, as the Fees Must Fall movement petered out, I think their funding just ran out. I think their investors pulled out because they were going too radical.
Yeah, you have that problem in this country with Labour. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn has recently been pulled up for taking money from a particular terrorist organisation. I think you find that quite a lot with socialist governments or communist-style governments. Obviously, I don't think South African government is a communist government, but it's definitely a socialist in its orientation.
Well,
maybe not in principle, but in name.
The South African government is made out of three parts. It's COSATU, ANC, and the South African Communist Party government, in terms of the trifecta, if you will.
Yeah,
so we definitely have strong communist influence in our government, but also in our policies. So you're not wrong.
No, that's fine. I was going to say it's definitely more of a socialist movement by the way that it operates. As you quite rightly said, it's now sold off most of its national points because it knows it's in debts. That's what socialist countries normally do, and then blame it on capitalism. They also have the point of having cultural Marxism to the point of saying, well, we need somebody to blame, as you said with Socrates. It's a quite socialistic point. They've always done that. They always will do that. We need an oppressor so we can say that we're oppressed. And so people will vote for us so we can get rid of the oppressor. So it's always been exactly the same thing. It's just that people don't see the similarities between these type of things. And I know you do, but I mean, in general, most people don't see any sort of similarities between this. And it's just infuriating to me because there's so much that's exactly the same all over the world. And it just seems that there's a conscientious rise of socialism for whatever reason, like that's going to actually do anything. And people seem to forget.
But I always tell people, if you want a vision of the future, just look at South Africa. We're one of the most diverse culturally, racially, linguistic nations in the world. I mean, we have 11 official languages in our country. So if you want to see what the future will be like in terms of a completely diverse,
how many languages?
11 official languages.
London has over 300, my friend, official languages.
All just dialects of English.
No, different languages, over 300.
Official languages? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought South Africa was the king at 11.
No, London in itself has over 300 different languages or 300 different sub-dialects from languages.
Right, but let's be clear. Official languages are state-recognized languages. In other words,
that's fine. Our state would never recognize it because that means that we're too much.
Right. You only recognize one language that I know of there. But in South Africa, to be very clear, the state does recognize 11 in South Africa. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's a completely different scenario when it comes to diversity. We have so many problems coming from our language policies. For example, a big chunk of the population speaks Afrikaans, my home language. And a big issue at the moment is the schools. There are a few schools still left that are strictly Afrikaans speaking. They teach in Afrikaans and they do their announcements in Afrikaans. And there's big pressure now to turn all the schools in South Africa into English-speaking schools because English is an international language. But what people don't understand is that Afrikaans is an African language. It originated here. it wasn't developed by white people. It was developed by the colored community and the black South Africans and the Indian South Africans. They had the Dutch South Africans. They heard them speak Dutch, and then they created their own dialect called Afrikaans. It's almost called Kitchen Dutch. The poorer white South Africans also picked up on it and created an official language. It's one of the youngest languages in the world. I think it only turned 100 years old last year or something like that. And it's absolutely incredible that such a young language has so much influence in a country. And the other ironic thing is Afrikaans was the big language of the oppressor. It was the language of apartheid. But the interesting thing is the majority of Afrikaans-speaking South Africans aren't white. The majority of Afrikaans-speaking South Africans are black or colored. And just a clarification for everyone that doesn't know, colored is an official ethnicity in South Africa. There's a distinct difference between a colored South African and a black South African.
What would that be?
The coloreds are of mixed race origin. They're of the Khoisan origin, the original South Africans, like a nomadic tribes. And they're also of Malay and Indian origin. So they're a very interesting ethnic group. They have their own. They speak Afrikaans. They have their own culture. They have their own. If you call a colored person in South Africa black, he'll just laugh at you and insult you in a very creative manner in Afrikaans. And that's what people don't understand. And I think everyone's familiar with Trevor Noah, and he jokes about this a lot. Africa is the factory of the coloreds. That's where they come from. Their culture originated here, and that's where they reside. And they're a very interesting group of people. I'm of the opinion that the colored community in South Africa is the ethnic community and the culture that has the biggest sense of identity, because they started off with no identity. They started off as this melting pot of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And they just created a culture for themselves. They have a very distinct culture, which I find absolutely fascinating.
Trevor Noah is colored?
I don't know.
That group.
He's mixed race, but to be colored, you have to be part of that community. You have to be part of that.
That's what I'm asking, if he's part of that community.
Yeah, no, he's not. Okay. I don't think he identifies as colored. No, he's not from that specific South African.
I know he's South African, that's all.
Mm-mm. And the interesting thing is, when I refer to coloreds on Twitter or whatever, online, people, oh no, that's a fucking racist slur. I go, they call themselves that. That's what they classify themselves as. If you fill in a form in South Africa, they ask you, are you black, white, Asian, or colored, or other? That's an official race in South Africa. That's what people don't understand. It's so much more complex than people think. The racial politics of South Africa and the racial demographics.
We have a lot of nuance here. If you take Louisiana, we have a group of people called Creole, and they speak patois, like a part English, part French, mostly French. English-speaking person will not understand it, but a French-speaking person would. And anyway, to make a long story short, they range in skin color from very as light as I am to medium, what probably high yellows, what a lot of Southerners would call them, dark, but not black. But those people there's something else. I mean, they're Creole. It is a mixture of French, Haitian, American, English. It's this mixture of people that just were there in this wild place in the swamp and kept on humping each other. But anyway, it's just funny how you have that different nuance, because I tell you, if they're Creole, you don't want to say, oh, you're awful dark to be Creole, or you're awful light to be Creole. Either way, that would be very offensive. And what I mean by offensive, these people, they'd be like, fuck this motherfucker, ain't gonna buy him a drink or nothing. You know what I mean? He's not gonna want to fight you. He just would be like, what a dick.
We're very lucky in the UK, where we don't really have too many problems with guns and things like that. So we're not too bad. We're not too bad.
Well, not outside the sort of major cities. I should imagine that they do have minor guns, but obviously nothing compared to the good old United States. That's one thing I definitely will give them. They outshine us on at the moment.
Oh, yeah, they outshine us. They don't outshine a lot of African countries.
No. They've got a bit of catching up to do there.
Indeed they do, unfortunately.
Well, obviously they need to start importing a few more shithole country residents, don't they? And they could easily take that title away.
Shithole. That's fun to say. That's why CNN said it 190 some times in a 24-hour period. The first day.
But that's what I told you. They was just looking for an excuse. I mean, it's still alleged. That's what people don't realize. It's still alleged. There's still no proof that he said it.
No.
And and the thing is, CNN just went with it. They just wanted an excuse to say shit all over and over on their channel. Get the shock factor, get people to tune in. Of course,
shithole.
That's exactly what they were doing.
Look on three, boys. Shithole on three. 1, 2, shithole. On three. Wait. Let's try it again. On 3. 1, 2. Shithole.
Shithole.
We tried. We're all white. We have no rhythm.
I have
what actually shocked me about it was that I didn't realize Americans use the term shithole. I always thought that was very sort of a British term. And
don't you guys just say shite?
Well, sort of. My old man used to refer to our rooms when I was growing up as a shit pit. No,
brother,
shit pit.
That's American as well as British. It must be because that's what I laughed with Mrs. Ogre because that was like my go-to term when something was trash. It's a shithole.
Yeah,
very.
Maybe it is shit tip then as ours, but I was assumed that it was more of a British term. So hearing Trump say shithole, it was like, oh, you can see the part Scottish coming out of him there, can't you?
To keep it on topic, I've got a question for Caracal.
Cheers.
What the question is I've just done a little bit of research for places like Vodafone Tower, for instance, in Johannesburg. Are places like that actually physically collapsing because the buildings are actually starting to collapse from the top downwards to the point where nobody's actually doing anything about looking after buildings anymore?
I don't live in Joburg, so I can't really give you a first eyewitness account. But the thing is, the tower is still pretty stable. It's not falling apart. But I think a big theme in South Africa is disrepair. South Africa doesn't have that. We don't have a culture of maintenance. And I'm not talking about a certain group in South Africa. I'm talking about all South Africans. South Africans really struggle with maintenance. We really struggle with maintaining nice things. And so when it comes to those things, I mean, you saw that clip of Lauren Southern where she's sitting in that tower and she just looks up, and it's absolutely beautiful. I saw a lot of films shot there and advertisements and commercials and everything. But the thing is, we don't look after our shit. We're really terrible at keeping things maintained and nice. And I know you British are absolutely incredible with it. You have a niche for looking after things and preserving things.
Yeah, I was about to say.
We need to teach. I think that's something we need to encourage in South Africa, is to create a culture of preservation, a culture of maintenance. You have something nice, you have a nice car, look after it. My father always used to say, if you have a nice car, if you look after it, it will look after you.
Yeah.
And a thing that happens in South Africa is South Africans will take a car and they'll drive it until it breaks down. And they, oh no, it's broken. Need a new car. Like, okay, fine, bro. But if you just changed its oil, made sure it had enough water when it was thirsty, you looked after it, that car will look after you. And I think that's something we need to teach. I think it's a cultural thing. We need to promote the idea of looking after your shit, basically.
No, I just found it funny that the buildings and infrastructure that are supposed to be keeping the country and the GDP of the country afloat, and yet the buildings that are the ones that are actually providing all the GDP, for instance, obviously Vodafone and other places like that, are literally falling apart. Does that mean that in theory that's a metaphor for the actual economy in itself?
I think you could use it as a very good metaphor for the economy in general. Like I said, we're not very good with maintenance. We don't look after the blessings that we have. And if we can just, it frustrates me to no end, the fact that if we just made a little bit of an effort to see what we already have, to see this amazing blessing of infrastructure and potential and riches that we have, and just look after it. Think of the future generations. One of my favorite quotes is, "A wise man plants a tree that he will never sit under." And I think that's the idea we need to promote, that you plant a tree that your child or your child's child will sit in the shade of, and he'll think, yes, thank you, grandfather, for doing this for me. And that's what a civil man does.
Or a gentleman, as Oga would say.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
I have no problem with either one, but I do love that. Do you know where the quote comes from?
I think it's just a Greek proverb.
That's beautiful. I think about that a lot. Things that I do now that won't, if it even continues when I die, that wouldn't have an impact for some time. It's important.
Yeah, definitely is.
It's like my father always said, think for yourself, but also think ahead. There's always another tomorrow. There's always going to be people that are going to be left behind, that are going to be long after you're dead. They're still going to be there, and they're going to sit under those trees that you planted. They're going to live in that house that you built. And if you don't build a sturdy house for the future, those people are going to suffer because of you. So you always need to think of the coming generations, the people that are going to live after you, the people that are going to live in your shadow, in a sense, the people that are going to live with your legacy. And I think if just people on an individual level start thinking that way, we'd have a much better world in general. We'd have a much more functioning world. We'd had such a much more functioning society if people just thought a bit more long term in terms of the effects of their decisions.
Exactly. No, I completely not agree. I mean, you actually touched on something that my dad's always told me, or what my dad's always asked me, especially when I used to be a little tearaway when I was younger, and I did used to be one of them. You always used to say to me, what is your legacy going to be? And it's like, you will have kids, you will have this, you will have that. What are you going to give them? What are you going to provide them? Are you going to give them debt, or are you going to give them something? That was always my...
The interesting thing is, that's how. So a little bit of trivia: in the old apartheid government, we had a big problem in the early 1900s with, we call it the arm blanke vraagstuk, which is the poor white man question. The fact that we had a big impoverished community of white South Africans, Afrikaans South Africans, that were basically living from hand to mouth. They were growing their own food. They didn't go to university. I think my grandfather was the first man in our family that went to university. And then what the government did was, and through the church as well, they started cultivating this culture and this idea of, if you don't earn more money than your father, if you aren't more prestigious and more successful than your parents, then you're an absolute failure. That should be your only mission in life, to do better than your parents. And they drilled that into that generation, and they created, and that's like the baby boomer generation for us, basically. These people that grew up with this idea burned into their psyche, that if you don't earn more than your parents, then you are a failure. And you still see a lot of that permeating in today's culture. With a lot
in our culture, if you don't have more leisure time than your parents, and I'm not even kidding you, because I was Generation X. That's what I believe when it turned. Because you said baby boomers, I agree. That was, you got to do better than your parents, have a better house, have a better, educate, the whole 9 yards. But for Generation X, it was more or less, if you don't have more leisure time than your parents, you're a failure. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and we still have the consequences of that in the millennial South African generation, where you have this phenomenon where children are still trying to outperform their parents, and they go study medicine, they go study accounting, and they go study all these prestigious things. They become lawyers, but they are absolutely miserable because their only mission in life was to earn more than their parents, but they're not happy. That's why my father always told me, just do what you like. Just do what makes you happy. You don't have to earn more than me. You don't have to be more successful. But as long as you're happy in that pursuit of, if you're happy in that pursuit of that future, then you're fine. Then you'll be all right. But you also need to think of your children, because if you're going to live that lifestyle where you're not going to earn more than your parents, then you're going to have to be prepared for all the consequences that come with that, for the finer print, if you will.
Yeah, I have a personal quote that I use myself. It used to be one of my headers for my channel. One is only truly happy in the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, we're losing that too. I believe that a man, and when you gave the numbers, you said it was 100 and some odd and 100,000, whereas that may sound like a lot to some people, it's not. So I'll be honest. One thing I do appreciate about your delivery on this subject. Let me not I don't want to stutter too much. This is a tough one for me because I try to put myself in your position, but I see myself handling it completely different, probably not as well as you handle it. And what I mean to say is this: you look at it realistically. It would be very easy for you to say they're killing people that look like me, and you did. I mean, if someone even said made nameless, I think you've seen it in the chat about, you were graphic about, hey, we already went through it once, we're not going to do it again. It wasn't to be titular. Conscious Carrickle wasn't trying to provoke anybody. He was just saying this is what's happening. They are torturing people this way. But after that, you were realistic about the numbers. I kind of wondered too, boys, if it's not too much, because we've got a little bit of time, but Mrs. Ogre will be back. Very brief housekeeping. Mrs. Ogre's grandfather, 96, he went to the hospital Friday, and he's coming back home today. But, it was like pneumonia. You never know at that age when it's like the last time they go to the hospital. And I'm not saying that, look, it's all good because he's coming home. But that's what's gone down. And she's bringing tea home and, to take care of some family business. But it has been a good night. Why is it? And that's why it will be no more than 2 hours a night, gentlemen. We'll go a little bit longer in here. We'll give our final words, as we definitely want to have those. And also, Magic Ball is going to work. Blah, 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 blah. Why does it seem to me that when I hear you, and because I don't know, I only know two, is it, okay, bam, here you go. You ready, Conscious Carrickle? Straight question, I want a straight answer. Is it a coincidence that yourself and Adam and his apple, both South Africans, Boers, whatever you'd like to call y'all. Not sure he's a farmer, but he may be. Why? It seems to minimize the situation they're in, or at least be very realistic about it. Whereas other people that are in a different situation seem to maximize, i.e., a Hispanic person in the United States or Great Britain, a black person in the United States or Great Britain, where they seem to maximize what they consider to be this bad thing. Why do we see that difference? Why am I seeing that difference? Is it a coincidence that you and Adam and his apple are similar along that lines, where you don't want to, maximize the racial differences, and why the other side may want to? Could you help me? I don't want to ask it like
I really think. Okay, so I think I got your question. I think my answer would be, we were raised in the same context. We were raised in the same new South Africa. We were the born frees. We were raised in the new South Africa, not the old South Africa. We were raised in the context that we were exposed to all these different cultures, all these different races, all these different languages, and within that context, it molded our opinions, it molded our way of thinking, it molded our mindset. And I think that's why we share so many opinions, and why we share a way of thinking, is the fact that we were molded by the same fire. We were molded by the same circumstances. And I think that's the thing that South Africa has taught me, is that I think I can pretty confidently state that I have much better knowledge of how to deal with different cultures and different races and different languages than a lot of foreigners. Because I've been exposed to a shit ton. I've been exposed to any type of person under the sun almost. Because South Africa is basically a melting pot. It's this place where a bunch of rejects got together and they're just making the best that they can. Just look at any culture in South Africa. Look at the Dutch came here for a better life. They came here as basically, what the Dutch government did is they caught a bunch of homeless people on the streets, and they shipped them off to South Africa just to get some labor. And they told them, I can give you a piece of land if you do this and this. And then you got the French Huguenots as well, which came here because they were persecuted in France for their religion. They were Protestants, and they came here so they can have religious freedom. And then you have the Indian South Africans. They were brought here as slaves on the cane farm, and the sugar cane farms were British. And then you have the Malays, which were also brought here as slaves. And then you have the English South Africans, who also came here for a better life. And you have the black South Africans that also, if you go far enough back, also migrated down to South Africa. And they came here also looking for greener pastures, if you will. And if you look at the Khoisan, which are the only real, genuine South Africans, the original South Africans, they are the most hard done by group in the entire country. Because when the first white settlers came here in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, they encountered these Khoisan and they started pushing them upwards, and they basically chased them away and hunted them. And the Khoisan moved up deeper into South Africa to just get away from all this conflict. And then just as they moved up, the Bantu South Africans, the black South Africans, came from the top, and they migrated from the top, and the Khoisan got kind of squeezed in the middle, and they were hunted by the black South Africans as well, and their culture was absolutely obliterated. So my point is, if you look at South Africa, I can only sum it up as this melting pot of rejects from all across the world. They were just thrown together, and they just made the best of it. So you have this very tenacious gene pool. People that are survivors, people that have seen some hard fucking times, people that have went through absolute shit. Just look at the Voortrekkers, the Afrikaans South Africans that moved up to Johannesburg before they discovered gold. So the British in the Cape Colony wanted to turn all the schools English, and they started to create their own laws. And the white Afrikaans South Africans said, fuck this. And they started moving up, and they had this huge exodus of white South Africans just moved up into the interior of South Africa. And we had the big trek. And they went over the Drakensberg Mountains barefoot. They fought beasts, and they fought enemies, and they fought the nature itself, and they suffered. But at the same time, it created this group of people that are fucking hard, people that are the best soldiers in the world, people that could in the 1900s fuck up the British Empire on their own with hunting rifles against the Imperial Army. And they gave the British thought the Boer War would be over in 3 months. It lasted 3 years. And the Boer War only ended because the British started throwing the Boer women and children into concentration camps, and they had to surrender. I mean, if you're fighting for what's behind you, one of my favorite quotes is, a soldier doesn't fight because he hates what's in front of him. He fights because he loves what's behind him. And when the British came and they broke that people, they took their women and their children and they burned down their farms, and they put the women and children into concentration camps, broken glass, and they raped them and they tortured them. Then those Boer soldiers had nothing to fight for, because then they lost their cause and they gave up and they surrendered. But after 3 years, a war that was supposed to last only 3 months, because these soldiers only had hunting rifles, they didn't have cannons, they had nothing. They were just a bunch of hicks, basically. And we gave them a good go. We took on the British Empire, and we snapped them to an extent. We cracked them.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go for it.
As you're speaking about wars and things at this moment in time, do you think that there is a chance, maybe not necessarily in a couple of weeks or a month's time, but maybe in a couple of years, do you think there's a chance with people that are preparing for it and the animosity from blacks to the whites at the moment in South Africa, do you think there's a chance of an actual civil war happening, especially with people that are prepping for it?
I'm going to be honest, I can't see it happening. Because the thing is, what people don't understand is that black South Africans aren't this homogenous mass of people. They're like you pointed out earlier, they have a bunch of cultural differences as well. I can't see them banding together against a common enemy, because they hate each other just as much as there's just as much tension between the different black cultures as there is between the different races in South Africa. So I can't really see a civil war between two equally matched forces.
But if you were to keep on, as everybody keeps on saying at this moment in time, keep on enforcing that idea of propaganda of saying that the white man is what's causing all your problem, the white person is what's taking your lands, taking your opportunities, taking all of this, do you not think more people would band to their cause, i.e. like Antifa and Black Lives Matter in America?
That's the thing. I don't know. I'm gonna have to wait and see. South African politics is very complex. It's not excuse the pun, so black and white. It's really, really complex. There's so many different groups of people and so many different vested interests, and I can't really see the country devolving into civil war. It's gonna have to find there's definitely a bunch of pressure, and it's gonna have to find an outlet. But I don't see it happening through a civil war. It's going to probably be incarnated in some other form.
Yeah. Do you think the whites, as in the white farmers themselves, might start digging themselves in or start making small skirmishes. For instance, because I know a lot of them because I know a lot of
definitely.
them
There are already people that are stocking up on weapons and people that are making like doomsday prepper moves and stuff. No, there's definitely that type of mentality within a lot of South Africans.
So
and the thing that you need to remember is,
sorry, I was going to say maybe it won't come from the black side. That maybe it might come from the white side. That might actually be a retaliation.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine, even though I'm in the thick of it. The thing is, if you look at Zimbabwe, when the shit really started hitting the fan and people were starting to in mass exodus leaving the country, they had somewhere to go. They could come to South Africa. In South Africa, we have nowhere to go. The vast majority of white South Africans do not have the means to leave the country, firstly, and secondly, do not have the desire to leave. They'd rather, like me, most white South Africans have a very strong connection to their country. And a lot of them would rather stay behind and try and make the best of it than just fucking run away like a bunch of cowards.
Well, as you said, you've got more at stake though. You're like sixth, ninth generations, where the Zimbabweans were only what, second, third to fourth generation at most.
Yeah, there's a generation, but
yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
with them, there was less to fight for. As you quite rightly said, with soldiers, you're fighting for what you believe in, and if you've only been there for a little while, you're not going to be that bothered about it. But if you are South African, as you say, then you're going to want to fight for your land. You're going to want to fight for your place. That's why I'm saying I think a lot more people.
I think the best metaphor I can use is the difference is it's like being chased away from a pub because it's closing and being chased away from your own home. You'll most likely, if the barman and the bouncers give you enough shit, you'll leave the pub. But you're not going to get anyone to chase you away from your own home. Nobody's going to chase me out of my house.
Exactly.
That's how I see it. That's the metaphor I'd like to use, is the fact that you're not going to chase me away from South Africa. South Africa is my home. You're basically giving me the ultimatum that if I leave, I'm leaving my home behind. I'm leaving everything I know, everything that molded me into the person that I am. South Africa is such a big chunk of who I am. It's such a big part of my personality and my future and my past.
Exactly.
That I can't leave. I'm chained to this land. I'm chained to this country. I'm like I said, I'm gonna die here either on my deathbed or in front of the barrel of a gun.
Well, so that's my point. That's exactly my point, though. That's exactly my point, though, Conscious Caracal. You've just literally said that you're willing to die in front of a gun to protect your homeland. If it comes to a point where your home, so to speak, if it comes to the point where other people are going to come and try and take it for you, or if there's a little coalition that starts forming to say that they're going to form a neighborhood watch, I use that in inverted commas, then you're going to join something like that. Then that becomes a militia, and then that becomes a point of being able to do something. The escalation can come quite quickly. I think if civil war was to happen in South Africa, if it was, it would come from the whites in retaliation to the blacks.
Yes, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, there would definitely be a pushback. Now, you definitely see a lot of South Africans banding together to fight for what they believe in. And the thing, a point that one of my mates always makes, which I think is very crucial, is that you don't understand how foreigners don't understand how the vested interest that a lot of South Africans have in their country. And at the moment, we're still living too good. We're still making too much money. I'm talking about white South Africans. We're still living too comfortably. So you're not seeing a lot of cohesion. You're seeing a lot of conflict. People are still just thinking of themselves. But when the shit really hits the fan, when things really start going backwards, you're going to see people start banding together and saying, no, fuck this, to this point and no further. We're going to start taking a stand. And you're going to see stuff like that happening if things progress or escalate to that point where people are literally being told to either fuck off or die.
Yeah. That's the only point that I was getting to, basically, is the point that if people will push you too far, then you're going to defend the point. So, no, that's exactly where I was going to go. Does anybody else have any other questions? Because I don't think we've got too much long left.
Oh, no, we should get, we got 2 minutes left. I was going to cut it at...
I'd maybe just like to bring up, my city is, in 90 days, my city is about to run out of water, Cape Town. One of the first major cities in the world to run completely out of water, and it's going to go full Mad Max then. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm already armoring up my car.
Hang on. Now you're saying that Cape Town there'll be no tap water. The toilets won't flush. Water.
No, they're going to shut it off. You're going to have to go to certain points to collect water, like 15 liters of water per person.
15 liters. So that's 3 gallons. That's that's 15 liters. 4 into 15.
Fuck, why can't you 12. Americans just use the right system?
It's almost 4 gallons. It's a little less than. Well, I was just getting. You probably see the chat there, man. I was already getting my balls busted by Loafer Sheffield. He said, "Spanner, you mean wrench? Next, you'll be going metric Celsius."
Well, interesting trivia. It was 40 degrees today, 40 degrees Celsius here where I live. So it's getting quite hot as well. But yeah, it's going to go full Mad Max in about 70 days. So
you know what I like about my crew here is that you take, for example, tonight. I mean, I enjoyed tonight. I had some questions. Bollocks had some questions. But it is what it is. The best person to steer the night tonight was Common Sense Guy. We all knew that. We didn't like play rock, paper, scissors for it. You know, there'll be times Bollocks is getting close done with a game show that we've got coming up here, being produced by Magic Bollocks. And, you know, no one has been telling him what to do or anything either. It's not like rock, paper, scissors over there. You know, he's doing his thing, just the way it is. So I think it was wonderful tonight. Thank you so much, Common Sense Guy. Good idea. Thank you, Conscious Caracal, because really the culmination of tonight's stream was that you were on a stream with myself and Magic Bollocks, if I'm not mistaken, where Common Sense Guy wasn't present to keep things going in the proper direction. And we basically, I think we fucked a dog for about an hour and a half or so, didn't we, Bollocks? I'm not sure. But whatever it is, that I take full responsibility for it because hang on a second. I got my, in fact, I don't have to look at my contract. I remember it's actually Common Sense Guy's fault. God rest the Britisher's soul. He is spoken from above, from the heavens above. He has ascended to the gates of Elysium. And as a matter of fact, I hear he took the joint over. But the contract stands. So, bam, we did it. We did it. And that's what I meant to say when that long diatribe is that we'll go in this order. I'll give a little more filibuster as I say one more thing before my final word and everybody else talks. And it's still going to stay this way. Conscious Caracal, Magic Bollocks, Common Sense Guy, myself. I love this. But I do believe that Wednesdays, I'm going to try to prod him, and we'll see if we're not going to be on Magic Bollocks' channel on Wednesday. And if not this Wednesday, some Wednesday very shortly. Because for us, yeah, it's nice. If everyone here followed us to each channel, everyone on Common Sense Guys follows, everybody that's going to be on Bollocks' channel that wouldn't be all followed us everywhere, because we would have a pretty nice little crew, you know, in the chat. And because to me, anything over 40 is a little high because nobody can really say what they want. And I don't know, once you get below 5 or 6, it's like, who are you talking to? Yourself or someone else. But anyway, that said, yeah, man, I can't say enough. Well, wonderful topic. Very well thought out answers from a man that's probably been thinking about this kind of thing his whole life. And thank you so much for steering this right. I hope that this makes the balance even. Conscious Caracal, that you come back many, many times, and that this is only the beginning of what has been so far nearly a year relationship, and that will continue. And before I let go and on the final, I'm pushing it. I'm 2 minutes in to Conscious Caracal's time, but let me say this is for him. Please make sure that you check out, and if he does mention the Young Turks Suck subreddit page, and if he is so good to mention that as he speaks, I will make sure that I send out links in the chat. Thank you, gentlemen. We all know the order, right? Carry on.
Okay, so I would just like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to just talk about my country, to talk about what's going on here. Because the thing that I notice is you foreigners have absolutely no idea what's going on here. It's just a shithole to you, but it's my shithole. So that's what I know. And I welcome your questions, and I really like the fact that people are getting interested in it. That people aren't just letting shit happen here. They are interested. They're vested on the topic that we have issues. South Africa has big issues at the moment, and we're working through it. But at the same time, we can't do it without the world watching. If the world doesn't look at what we're doing right now, we're gonna definitely not have that pressure to try and succeed and sort ourselves out. And the thing that I just want to end on is that I'm definitely going to join you guys for more panels in the future. I'm fully invested in this stream. I'm one of the holdouts, one of the few people that have been here for, like you said, for almost for over a year. Hey? And I'm definitely not going anywhere. I'm going to stick around, and I'm going to give my opinion, my honest opinion. If you guys want to challenge it, go for it. I love it. Give me some challenges. Don't just take everything I say on face value. If I have an opinion that you don't like, fucking challenge me. And I just like to say, I'm actually at the moment, I'm uploading a new video. It's been 3 months. There's going to be some new content on my channel this year, so definitely check that out. It's going to be up tomorrow at about this time. And I'm not going to say what it's about yet, but you'll have to wait and see. And check out, like Ogre already shouted me out, TYT Stux. I'm the moderator over there. We keep the young Turks on their toes. We provide with the best banter, videos, discussion on all their fuck-ups and dishonesty. So definitely go check out there. And you can follow me on Twitter and Gab, definitely. That's where I'm most of the day, giving my opinions and just talking about, just spitting my thoughts into the void of the internet and seeing what how people react and just sharing opinions, sharing thoughts. And I think that's all the internet really should be, is the sharing of ideas. It's the free marketplace of ideas on steroids. And that's why I'll always be a big supporter of freedom of speech and the idea that you need to be able to say what you think. You don't have to talk through a filter. You should never be forced to censor yourself. And I always end every last thoughts with the tweet that I keep pinned at the top of my Twitter always. The biggest threat to free speech isn't the government silencing us, but the masses of people actively silencing themselves. And I'd like people to think about that every time that I talk on this panel, that sentiment. And that's where I'm going to leave it tonight. That's where I'm going to end it. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to continue what Conscious Clerical said there about free speech, because that's exactly what we've been demonstrating tonight, is the ability to talk freely about things that are actually going on. And as Conscious has quite rightly pointed out, is that there aren't enough people over here in the, well, I suppose what is classed as the West. The West that so vehemently attacked apartheid in the 70s and 80s and cheered from the rooftops when it finally fell apart in the early 90s, and Mandela, the great hero as he was perceived, becoming president. And yet now that tables have turned and it is now effectively being run by black supremacists. Now there's a term you don't hear in the mainstream.
Just a mouse.
Cutting edge common sense, cutting edge, mate. But the point is that now it's the other way around. You hear nothing. They don't want to talk about it. Now, is that because of ideology? Because they're scared to death of being called racist? Or is this actually some kind of Kalagi-inspired plan? I don't know. That's up for us all to decide. And that's why we do what we do. That's why Mr. Ogre started this channel. This is why Common Sense became a part of it. This is why I'm part of it. Because we discuss to try and find the answers, to try and find out what's going on. But we do have forces against us. Mr. Ogre lives in a country that is possibly maybe the last bastion of free speech in the West, because they have it in a constitution that guarantees it. Whereas in this country, we've just had a petition put to Parliament that has been outright rejected by the government because we asked for our ridiculous hate speech laws to be repealed, and they said no. In one of the biggest contradictions I've ever seen in my life, where 1 minute they say we defend free speech, but not to say things that we don't like.
God have mercy.
So we, the people, have to keep talking to each other. I know the establishment can't stand the internet, really, because it's given us a freedom that we never had in the past. In the past, we had the press, we had the television, and maybe our mates down the pub who we spoke to. Now we have the whole world at our fingertips. We have people like Conscious Clerical who can tell us straight from the horse's mouth what is going on in South Africa, rather than you just reading The Guardian and being told it's a wonderful ethnic paradise. Now we know. So people, get out there, learn, find out what's really happening, and talk about it. Don't you ever let the establishment silence you. That's all for me, ladies and gents. Thanks, everybody in chats. Thank you to my panelists, especially Common Clerical. Excellent. Come back soon. Common Sense, the man of reason, and the wonderful, charismatic, and bearded host that will always be Mr. Ogre. Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
No worries. I'm not going to do any sort of long diatribe for tonight. I'm not going to give a long, big-winded point. The fact of when people are saying that their city is running out of water, that they're going to put armor on their car, and we're speaking to them about it, and we think that we're in a civilized part of the world or civilized world, and yet this is going on, and nobody here, apart from obviously Conscious Clerical, would have had an idea, an iota of what was going on. Because guess what? I ain't heard anything saying that water's going to run out in Cape Town. Haven't heard a dicky bird on it. I haven't heard anything of anything that's really going on in South Africa. That was the point of this stream. So I have to thank Conscious Clerical for getting in contact with me on that point. Because without him getting in contact with me, this would not have happened. So I have to thank you for that. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping for me, to be honest with you. We've got Coach Redpool coming on Friday. The topic of that for us is going to be if we did have clones, would they have rights? On the Saturday, which will be 10 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, we're going to have a lady on called Social Free State. I'm sure people in the chat know who she is, but she's had a very big court case recently. I'm sure she won't mind me saying. It was to do with a rape to do with immigrant, that was in and around her area and things like that. The main point of the story is what's happened to her and what's happened afterwards. That will be the main point of actually the topic that we'll be talking about. So I'm really looking forward to both of those days, and I hope you lot are as well. And, well, I'll pass this over to Ogre. Thank you very much.
Well, as usual, I was stretching my legs, and he timed it perfectly. I got a good sound system. I can hear it everywhere I go in the house. So thank you so much, Common Sense. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll probably thank you all again right before I go. But so I can be as brief as possible as I look, and people have left in 9 minutes. I'm not going to take it. But I may take my 5. Very quickly, good to have some newcomers that maybe I haven't noticed before and you've been around. Three-Eyed Raven, thanks for being here. Blizzate, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly or not. BLZA, Blizzate. Thank you for being here. Nice to have newcomers. Nice to have the old folks around. As Clerical said, been around so long that he's like a picture on the wall sometimes, but he's always here. It's so nice to have him. It's refreshing to me to see a situation where there's no question about it. It doesn't matter what Conscious Clerical says. This is my time to say what I want to say. He is oppressed. He is in a position where the vast majority of people do not like him. It doesn't matter that they're not going to band together and that there's not going to be a civil war. I'm glad that those things are being told to me by someone that's reasonable and sensible and knows, because I don't want to think I hate war. I don't like the idea of man butchering man. You know, call me old-fashioned. I don't like the thought of human beings killing one another for, for nothing usually for nothing. And rarely one side would be killing the other because of an aggression. I mean, we all know how war works. I'm not going to go into that. It's refreshing to see this, though, where there is no argument. There is no debate. Person is Majority of people around them do not like them, or apparently don't like them, say they don't like them. What can we do but go to the horse's mouth, go to the well and draw the water? We can't assume. Makes an asshole out of you and me. Let's be reasonable. Let's go to the source. The source says, as I mentioned, they sing happy little songs saying they want to kill the boar and all this. I can't believe it. I watched this. And then as I said, be it coincidence. And again, I'm not saying you sidestepped it, Caracol. It's not trying to poke at you, but not really an answer when I asked if it was a coincidence. He just said, oh no, this guy was probably raised like me. So I think the direct answer would be, no, it's not a coincidence. Just so happens that the oppressed group from this area that have been oppressed, they created a system that wasn't perfect. Bollock sent me a satire about this, the South Africans from, I'm guessing, the mid-'80s or so, maybe as early as the 90s, but a long time ago. They just destroyed and dogged it, man, made everybody look really messed up, the white people and the black people. It was because, yes, maybe it wasn't perfect, but they did try to do something. And apparently, be it perfect or not, the new government thought it would be okay to enact what I've heard is 180. Conscious Caracol didn't commit to that. Who knows? I believe it's somewhere upwards of over 5. If it was even one new law in the incoming government, and maybe one day we'll talk about the Mandela effect. It has nothing to do with this. But the incoming government, Nelson Mandela, if it was so terrible, why would they continue to enact these things? I'm going to tell you this. If you want to find the problem, where the root of the problem is I have 1 minute left. You go to the people casting the blame. I've heard the old thing, follow the money. Yes, that's true too. That's a good way. But my number one, who's blaming? Me thinks thou protest too much kind of deal. Who's blaming? Who's saying, oh, look at this, look at that. Like in this common era with the Democrats with this whole me Russia nonsense. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to even say that without some kind of explanation of gaseous, inhaled, fractious. It's a little, anyway. Pardon me. At least it didn't come out the other end, is what I mean to say. So that said, thanks once again, folks. Thank you so much. Common Sense Guy, you're second to none, brother. Don't know what I'd do without you. Way to arrange this thing. I knew it was coming up, but as usual, you brought it to me as I was enjoying my little bit of time playing my video game and shocked me into realization that we had a serious stream today, and you just popped it off wonderful. Thank you so much. Magic Bollocks, of course, man. I mean, you're great today as always. Hope to get with you and see what we're going to do. Remember to tune in on Wednesday, Bollocks News Network Wednesday. Look for some satirical news your way. We're going to try to make you laugh, and we'll try not to laugh. It's difficult. I watched some of it again, and I laughed, and I knew it was coming. So check that out on Wednesday. And last but not least, Conscious Caracol, I don't know what to say, man. I said it. I hope that you read between the lines as I was speaking earlier. You lot down there, man, where you're from, are second to none. And I don't know anyone that's the caliber of human that you all are. And coincidence or not, the two that I know are second to none. So look, folks, make sure that you go check out Conscious Caracol's channel. He's tweeted it out. Check out TYT Sucks and everything else aside. If nothing else matters, remember this, everybody. Be good to your friends. Be good to your family members. Be good to your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when that thing your friend, your family member, your loved one has done seems to be so huge, you'll never be able to forget about it. Because constant viewers, my beloved friends here on the panel, at a time you think not, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, your life, and your beloved soil of Africa, it may depart from you.